David Chukwu had always been known as the boy who could turn failure into brilliance. Born into a family that struggled to put food on the table, he grew up in a small two-room apartment in Akwanga, a city where people knew each other's secrets before the sun rose. His father, once a mechanic, had lost his job due to a workplace injury that left him limping. His mother sold fruits in the market, waking before dawn to carry baskets to her stall. Despite the hardship, David excelled in school, becoming the pride of his parents and the hope of his two younger siblings, Emeka and Ijeoma. Every morning, as he walked the dusty path to school, he would pass the big houses on Hilltop Crescent, where children were driven in shiny SUVs. He promised himself that one day his family would live there. Education was his escape. Every award he earned felt like a step toward that dream. But behind his calm demeanor, David carried the weight of poverty and the fear of becoming another statistic in the city where opportunities were scarce. Amina Okoro was unlike any teacher Akwanga High had ever had. At 26, she had already lived through heartbreak and survival. She came from a well-respected family in Abuja, but her father's death in a car accident had changed everything. Her mother, a retired nurse, moved with her to Akwanga to escape the whispers that followed her father's mysterious deaths. Teaching English became Amina's way of starting over. Her love for literature was deep, and she taught with a passion that made her students adore her. Her beauty, soft-spoken nature, and modern teaching style set her apart. Parents liked her because their children spoke of her with admiration, not fear. For David, English was his weakest subject, but Amina saw something in his writing that no one else did. She stayed back after classes to tutor him, often praising his imagination. "You have the soul of a writer," she told him once, and he never forgot the warmth in her voice. Soon, their sessions extended beyond grammar. They talked about dreams, fears, and life beyond the classroom. What began as mentorship slowly blossomed into something both of them knew was forbidden but irresistible. Their relationship remained hidden for months. They met after school in quiet spots, under the old mango tree behind the science block, or in Amina's modest apartment when the streets were empty. To David, Amina was more than a teacher. She was the person who believed in him when no one else did. To Amina, David was the reminder that love could be pure even in unexpected places. They promised each other that one day, when he graduated, they would stop hiding. But secrets have a way of finding light. The first signs of Amina's pregnancy were subtle: fatigue, morning nausea. She hid it with a brave face, continuing her lessons as though nothing was wrong. But a slip in the staff room, a sudden fainting spell, led to whispers among teachers. Rumors spread like wildfire. Students overheard. Phones buzzed with gossip. One reckless student claimed he saw David leaving Amina's apartment one evening, and by the next morning, the entire school was buzzing with the scandal. When the principal summoned them both, David's heart pounded. He walked into the office, his uniform neat, but his palms sweating. Amina sat beside him, her face pale but composed. The principal, a stern woman with glasses perched on her nose, looked at them with a mixture of pity and anger. "Is it true?" she asked, voice trembling with restrained fury. Neither spoke, but their silence was answer enough. Outside, parents were arriving, drawn by the news. David's mother stormed through the crowd, her wrapper tied tightly, prayer book clutched in hand. "My son," she cried, "tell me this is not true." David couldn't meet her eyes. Amina's sister, Nkechi, appeared moments later, tears running down her cheeks as she pleaded with the principal. "She's still my sister. Please don't destroy her." By afternoon, reporters had arrived, cameras flashing. Headlines hit social media. "Teacher pregnant by student. Akwanga High in disgrace." David was expelled. Amina suspended indefinitely. Their families bore the shame. Neighbors avoided them. Church members whispered during sermons. The school board discussed pressing charges, while the community demanded punishment. That night, David stood outside the gates of the now empty school. The sky was dark, and the street lamp flickered above him. His future, once so bright, felt shattered. Across town, Amina sat alone in her apartment, staring at her phone, hoping for a message that never came. She knew the world would never forgive her, but her heart ached only for the boy who had given her hope. As the clock struck midnight, David and Amina, miles apart, each made a silent vow to fight for the love they knew was real, no matter how much disgrace the world threw their way. Under the same night sky, their lives had been torn apart, but neither knew that the scandal was only the beginning of a journey that would lead to unexpected happiness and fulfillment. The following morning, Akwanga's streets buzzed with gossip louder than the cries of market hawkers. The scandal had escaped the confines of the school walls and spread like wildfire into every corner of the city. Mothers whispered as they fetched water, fathers shook their heads at the newspaper headlines, and children repeated fragments of the story, half in fear, half in awe. For the Chukwu family, disgrace landed like a heavy storm. Their tiny apartment became a prison of shame. David's father sat in silence, his limp foot tapping the concrete floor in frustration. "Do you know what you have done to this family?" he asked with a voice that trembled with anger. David stood in the corner, his head bowed. "Papa," he began, but the older man raised a hand. "Silence. You have dragged our name through the mud. They will laugh at us in church, in the market, everywhere." David's mother, torn between anger and love for her son, sat on the edge of her bed, clutching her Bible so tightly her knuckles whitened. "God will punish whoever bewitched you," she muttered. But deep inside, she feared her son's actions might have indeed been his own doing, driven by feelings she couldn't understand. Yet, as she glanced at David's downcast face, she softened. "You are still my child," she whispered, "and we will face this storm together." Meanwhile, in the quiet corner of town, Amina Okoro faced her own demons. Her sister, Nkechi, stayed with her, pacing the living room as reporters hovered outside the gate. "Amina, why didn't you think? You knew this would happen," Nkechi cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. Amina sat on the sofa, staring at her trembling hands. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I love him." The words slipped out, and Nkechi froze. "You what?" "I love him," Amina repeated, louder this time, her voice cracking. "I know it's wrong, but it's the truth." Their mother, who had called earlier, was livid. "You have brought disgrace to our family," she had said on the phone. "Pack your things. Leave Akwanga. You can never show your face here again." The line went dead, leaving Amina with a hollow ache. Her father's memory felt distant. He had raised her to stand strong, but she now felt like a reed in the storm. By afternoon, things worsened. A group of angry parents gathered outside Amina's apartment, chanting for her to leave the city. Stones were thrown at her gate. Nkechi locked the door and pulled her sister away from the windows. "We can't stay here," she whispered. "They'll tear us apart." At the same time, David wandered the outskirts of the city, unable to return home after his father's rage. His friends avoided him, and strangers spat on the ground when they saw him. He found himself sitting by the mango tree behind the now-closed school, staring at the branches where he and Amina had once talked about life and dreams. He pulled out a small notebook where he scribbled thoughts, words she had once encouraged him to write. "For the first time in days," he wrote, "they can take everything from me, but they can't take what we share." As dusk fell, David walked toward Amina's neighborhood. His heart pounded as he saw the crowd dispersing from her gate. He waited in the shadows until the streets were empty, then knocked softly. Nkechi opened the door and glared at him. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. But Amina's voice came from behind, trembling yet firm. "Let him in." When David entered, their eyes met, and for a moment the world outside vanished. He walked toward her slowly, unsure if he should embrace her. But she stepped forward, resting her head against his chest, tears soaking his shirt. "They want to destroy us," she whispered. "Then we won't let them," he replied. That night they sat together, planning what to do. They knew staying in Akwanga was impossible. Every corner reminded them of the scandal, every face a judgment. Amina suggested leaving for Abuja, where her late father had left a small and used house. David hesitated, thinking of his family, but he knew he couldn't stay. "We'll start over," he said. "I'll work. You'll teach again." We'll prove them wrong. By midnight, the decision was made. They packed only what they could carry: Amina's books, David's notebook, a few clothes, and prepared to slip away at dawn. The next morning, David left a note for his mother, tucked under her pillow. Asterisk, forgive me. I have to make this right. I love you. Asterisk, his father never saw him leave. As the first rays of sun touched the streets, Amina and David boarded an old bus heading for Abuja. They sat side by side, holding hands, their faces turned toward the horizon. Behind them, Akwanga faded into the distance, its judgmental whispers drowned by the roar of the engine. Neither of them noticed the black SUV that pulled out behind the bus, its tinted windows hiding the faces of men sent by someone who wasn't ready to let them escape so easily. The journey to Abuja was long and heavy with silence. The bus rattled over the uneven highways, weaving through villages and towns that blurred past like fleeting memories. Amina rested her head on the window, her hand protectively on her stomach. David sat beside her, staring ahead, his mind swirling with plans and fears. Every few minutes, he stole glances at her, searching for reassurance in her face. She offered him a tired smile, and for a moment, he felt the world couldn't touch them. They arrived at dawn, the city still stretching awake. Abuja's towering buildings stood in stark contrast to Akwanga's low rooftops. The air smelled different, busier, harsher. They took a taxi to Amina's late father's house in the outskirts, a modest bungalow overrun with weeds. The lock was rusty, and the walls wore years of neglect. Inside, dust covered the furniture, but it was shelter. It was theirs. For the first few days, they lived quietly. David swept the compound, patched broken windows, and fetched water from a nearby well. Amina cleaned the house and cooked small meals, her energy waning as her pregnancy progressed. At night, they spoke in whispers about the future. "We need money," David said one night, his voice steady but his eyes worried. "I'll find work. Anything." Amina touched his hand. "We'll survive. Together." The next morning, David went into the city to search for jobs. He tried construction sites, mechanic shops, and roadside businesses, but his youth and lack of qualifications worked against him. After hours of rejection, he finally found a man named Chitty, the owner of a small printing press. Chitty agreed to hire him as an assistant, paying barely enough for food, but it was a start. David returned to Amina that evening, exhausted but triumphant. "It's not much," he said, "but it's something." She embraced him, her eyes shining with pride. Weeks turned into months. Amina's belly grew, and so did the bond between them. Despite the hardships, there was joy in the small victories. A repaired wall, a meal shared under the stars, a quiet moment where they could forget the world's judgment. Amina began tutoring neighborhood children in English, earning a little money. Parents were skeptical at first, whispering about her past, but her kindness and skill slowly won them over. Yet, shadows lingered. One evening, as David returned home from work, he noticed a black SUV parked down the street. Its tinted windows reflected the setting sun, and it didn't move until he entered the house. When he told Amina, she grew pale. "Do you think someone followed us from Akwanga?" she asked. David tried to reassure her, but unease crept into his thoughts. Their lives became a mix of love and tension. During the day, they worked hard to build a life. At night, they locked doors and double-checked windows. Amina's pregnancy was now undeniable, and she feared someone might try to take her away or harm David. One night, as rain hammered the roof, she broke down in his arms. "What if they never forgive us? What if they find us?" David held her tightly. "Let them come. I'll protect you. Always." Things began to look up when Chitty, impressed with David's dedication, offered him a chance to learn graphic design. "You're a smart boy," he said. "With this skill, you can make good money." David seized the opportunity, staying late to practice on old computers. Soon, he was designing posters for local events, earning extra pay. Hope flickered in their hearts. They started saving every coin, dreaming of opening a small tutoring and printing business of their own. But happiness was fragile. One afternoon, while Amina was tutoring a student, a well-dressed man knocked on the door. His suit was crisp, his shoes polished. "Mrs. Okoro?" he asked with a thin smile. She hesitated. "Who are you?" "Just a messenger," he replied, handing her an envelope before walking away. Inside was a letter with no signature. Asterisk, you can't hide forever. The child you carry belongs to disgrace. Leave Abuja now, or worse will follow. Asterisk. When David returned home and read the letter, his jaw tightened. "This is a threat," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "Someone is watching us." Amina clutched his arm. "What do we do?" "We stay strong," he said. "They won't scare us away." The following week, David noticed the black SUV again, this time parked closer to their home. He approached it, fists clenched, but the car drove away before he could reach it. The fear was real, and so was the danger. Still, their love burned brighter than the threats surrounding them. One night, as they ate dinner by candlelight, Amina smiled at him. "No matter what happens, you've given me happiness," she said. "And you've given me reason to fight," he replied. They clinked their glasses of water like it was champagne, celebrating a love the world couldn't break. As they cleared the dishes, headlights flashed through the window. The black SUV rolled to a stop right outside their gate. This time it didn't leave. The black SUV idled at the gate, its engine humming like a predator waiting to pounce. David froze mid-step, his heart pounding against his ribs. Amina gripped his arm, her breath shallow. The vehicle's tinted windows revealed nothing but their own fearful reflections. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, slowly, the back window rolled down. A sharp-eyed man in his early 40s leaned out, his expression calm but cold. He wore a dark suit, his tie perfectly knotted, his eyes scanning David like a hunter sizing up prey. "Mr. Chukwu?" the man asked, voice smooth yet laced with menace. David stepped forward, fists clenched. "Who are you?" The man smirked. "Someone who doesn't forget disgrace." "You thought you could run away?" "The world doesn't forget." Without another word, he tossed a small card onto the ground, and the SUV drove off, its tires spraying dust. On the card was a single line, "We'll be seeing you soon." Amina trembled as David picked up the card. "We can't keep living like this," she whispered. David held her close, jaw tight. "I won't let them scare us. This is our life, Amina, not theirs." Over the next few weeks, the threats continued. Notes slipped under the door, the SUV parked at random corners, anonymous calls that hung up the moment Amina answered. Fear became a shadow in their home, yet it also fueled David's determination. He threw himself into work at the printing press, learning every skill Chitty offered, even staying after hours to practice on old computers. His designs improved, and clients began asking for him by name. With every small paycheck, he set aside money, determined to give Amina and their unborn child a safer future. Amina, meanwhile, continued tutoring children from the neighborhood. Her pregnancy made her slower, but her spirit remained unbroken. Neighbors who had once been suspicious began to admire her quiet strength. One elderly woman told her, "You are stronger than you think, my child. Keep going." Those words became a mantra. One evening, just as David returned from work, they found an envelope taped to their door. Inside was a large sum of money and a note. Asterisk, leave Abuja now, and this ends. Stay, and it gets worse. Asterisk, Amina's hands shook as she read it. What do they want from us? David's eyes burned with anger. Control. They want us to live in fear. He stuffed the money back into the envelope. We don't take their bribes. As the months passed, David's hard work paid off. Chitty offered him a higher position, impressed by his talent and dedication. "You have potential, boy," he said. "Use it well." With the extra income, David started saving for something bigger, opening a small shop where Amina could tutor and he could run printing jobs. Hope flickered brighter, but trouble wasn't far behind. One night, as rain poured in sheets, the SUV returned, this time stopping right outside the gate. Two men stepped out, their faces hidden under caps. David rushed out, wielding a metal pipe, shouting, "Leave us alone." One of the men laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "You think you can protect her? You're just a boy." David stood his ground, shaking but determined. The men exchanged glances, then returned to the SUV, driving off into the rain. This time, David knew it was only the beginning. Amina gave birth a month later to a healthy baby boy. They named him Samuel, meaning heard by God. Holding the child, David felt a surge of love so powerful it drowned out his fears. "We'll protect you," he whispered to his son. "No matter what." The baby brought joy, but also new challenges. Money was tight, and danger lurked in every shadow. Yet David and Amina's love grew stronger with every obstacle. They worked tirelessly, turning their tiny house into a home filled with laughter despite the threats outside. Then came an unexpected opportunity. A wealthy businessman named Mr. Adeyemi, impressed by David's designs, offered him a contract to work on marketing materials for his company. The pay was enough to change their lives. But there was a catch. Adeyemi was connected to powerful people, the same people who had been sending threats. "Work for me," he said, "and I'll make sure your family is safe. Refuse, and, well, Abuja can be dangerous." David was torn. Was this an opportunity or a trap? That night, David stood over his sleeping son, the contract in his hands. Signing it could bring safety and wealth, but at what cost? If you were in David's shoes, would you sign the deal with Mr. Adeyemi or risk everything to stay free? Comment below with your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next chapter, where choices will lead to consequences David never saw coming. David sat at the wooden table, the contract spread open before him, the dim bulb overhead swaying slightly in the evening breeze. Samuel slept in the corner crib, his tiny breaths filling the silence. Amina stood by the window, her arms folded tightly. "You've been staring at that paper for hours," she said softly. David didn't look up. This contract could change everything or ruin us. Amina walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "David, money is important, but not if it comes with chains." Her voice trembled. "We've come this far by fighting. We can't hand our freedom over to the same people who want to control us." David sighed. "But Samuel, he deserves better than this life of running and hiding." Days passed, and David avoided signing, hoping for clarity. Meanwhile, Mr. Adeyemi sent more messages, polite at first, then increasingly urgent. "Time is running out," one text read. "The world doesn't wait for indecisive men." Every time David passed the shiny SUV still lurking in the neighborhood, the pressure mounted. To distract himself, David poured his energy into work. His designs for local businesses were gaining attention, and for the first time, he felt close to something big. Chitty noticed and offered him a partnership in expanding the printing business. "You have a gift, boy," he said. "Don't waste it on the wrong people." Those words stuck in David's mind. Meanwhile, Amina's health began to falter. The stress, lack of rest, and whispers from neighbors took their toll. She tried to stay strong for Samuel, but David noticed her eyes dimming with worry. One night, she confessed, "Sometimes I feel like the world is waiting for us to fail." David held her close. "Then we'll prove them wrong. Together." One afternoon, David was called to a meeting with Mr. Adeyemi. The wealthy businessman sat in a leather chair in a high-rise office, the city skyline glittering behind him. "You're talented, David," he said smoothly. "Work for me, and you'll have power, money, protection. Refuse, and I can't guarantee your safety." His smile didn't reach his eyes. David clenched his fists. "And what do you want in return?" Adeyemi leaned forward. "Loyalty, and silence about certain things." He slid the pen across the desk. "Sign, and everything changes." David left the meeting with the pen, but not the signature. His mind was a storm. That night, as he lay awake beside Amina, he whispered, "What if this is the only way?" She took his hand. "David, love built on fear is no love at all. Whatever we choose, we do it our way." The next morning, something unexpected happened. Chitty introduced David to an investor looking to support small businesses. Unlike Adeyemi, this man offered help without threats. Only a fair deal. It was the chance David needed. But Adeyemi's men were watching. When they saw David with the investor, they followed him home. Later that evening, as David returned from the meeting, he found the gate ajar. Panic gripped him. Inside, Amina clutched Samuel tightly, tears streaming down her face. The living room was trashed, the walls marked with a warning scrawled in red. Last chance. A gold coin with Adeyemi's emblem lay on the floor. David knew, then, that signing the contract was not just a decision about money. It was about survival. But survival at what cost? That night, as he stood under the streetlight, the contract in one hand and the gold coin in the other, a car pulled up slowly. The door opened, and a familiar figure from his past stepped out, saying, "David, we need to talk." Now, should David trust this mysterious figure, or is it another trap? What would you do in his place? Comment your thoughts below, like this video if you're hooked, and subscribe to see what happens next in the chapter. The streetlight flickered overhead as the car door creaked open. David tightened his grip on the contract and the gold coin, eyes narrowing in disbelief. From the shadows emerged a tall figure in a faded blue kaftan, slim, dark-skinned, and slightly hunched. "Uncle," David breathed. It was his late father's older brother, Uncle Osita. Once a businessman in Enugu, he had mysteriously vanished after a bitter land dispute tore the family apart. David hadn't seen him in nearly 10 years. "I heard about the boy who embarrassed the whole town," Uncle Osita said with a smirk. "But then I looked closer and saw a man the world is trying to crush." David hesitated. "What are you doing here?" Osita stepped closer. "I came because I know Adeyemi. He once ruined me. Now he's circling you." He looked at the crumpled contract. "That paper is your leash, not your escape." Inside, Amina stood with Samuel in her arms, peeking through the window. David invited Osita in, still guarded. They sat on the cracked couch while Amina listened silently. Osita leaned forward, voice low. "Adeyemi doesn't just own businesses. He owns people, police, judges, thugs. I worked for him until I refused a job that crossed the line. A week later, I was robbed, accused of theft, and disgraced. I lost everything." David's stomach turned. "Why didn't you fight back?" "I did. I lost. But you still have something he doesn't. A clean name, a future, and people who love you." Osita's gaze softened. "That's worth more than any money." Amina finally spoke. "What should we do?" Osita nodded. "Take the investor. Build slow. Build honest. Adeyemi will strike back, but I'll help you disappear if it comes to that." The next few days passed in tension. David declined Adeyemi's offer through a short text. "Respectfully, I must walk my own path." No reply came. Instead, a response of a different kind arrived. One morning, the front gate was found broken, and Samuel's blanket had been stolen from the clothesline. Nothing else was taken, but the message was clear. Amina began sleeping with one eye open, and David stayed up late with a kitchen knife nearby. Osita, true to his word, helped relocate them temporarily to a distant part of the city, a cramped apartment, but safer. Then came a breakthrough. The investor David met, Mrs. Oluchi, a retired professor, offered them a small shop space to rent at half the normal price. "Your designs are good," she said, "and your story is even better." David named the new business Redemption Prints. The front half of the shop was for printing services, while the back became a mini learning center where Amina tutored children from the neighborhood. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. Clients trickled in. Word spread. Chitty sent referrals. Even Osita brought flyers to old contacts. Money came slowly, but each note felt earned. One night, after putting Samuel to sleep, David stood outside the shop with Amina. This is more than I ever dreamed." Amina nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "You gave us a name again. You gave our son a future. But peace never lasts." A week later, while David was finishing a late-night poster job, a customer walked in, young, clean-cut, but with eyes too sharp. "Nice shop," he said. "My boss used to own you. Said to say hello." He dropped a flash drive on the desk. "He thought this might interest you." David plugged it into his computer, hands shaking. A video opened. It was a recording, grainy security footage, of him and Amina kissing behind the school compound months ago. Another clip showed Amina walking into a pharmacy. The final clip zoomed in on Samuel's face outside their old apartment. David's blood ran cold. The flash drive came with a message on screen. "Your past is ours now." He shut the laptop slowly. His breath came in short bursts. When Amina walked in, Her smile vanished the moment she saw his face. What happened? He couldn't speak. He simply pointed at the screen. Amina stared at the clips, then turned to David with wide eyes. They're not done with us. They're just getting started. If someone threatened your family with your past, would you run or fight back? Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe to see how David and Amina stand against a force far greater than fear. The video stayed burned into David's mind long after the laptop screen went black. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the grainy images. His kiss with Amina behind the school, Samuel's innocent face in chilling focus. Adeyemi's message was clear. Asterisk, he could reach them anytime he wanted star. Amina's hands trembled as she held Samuel tighter that night. David, this isn't just a threat. This is a warning that they're watching us. What if they take him? Her voice cracked, and tears rolled down her cheeks. David pulled her close, his own fear buried beneath the need to stay strong. They won't. I swear, no one will take our son from us. Uncle Osita sat in the corner, his expression dark. You see now? Adeyemi doesn't play games. He wants control, and he'll use your family to get it. David turned to him. Then we have to end this. We can't keep running. Osita leaned forward, his eyes sharp. There's one way to fight him, expose him. Adeyemi's entire empire is built on fear and hidden crimes. I still have contacts, people who hate him as much as I do. If we can gather evidence, we can bring him down. David hesitated. And if he finds out what we're doing? Osita's lips curved into a grim smile. Then we make sure he can't touch us before he tries. For the next week, they lived like shadows, closing the shop early, avoiding routine, watching every corner. Osita met with his old contacts discreetly. One night, he returned with a folder stuffed with documents, contracts, photographs, financial records linking Adeyemi to illegal dealings. This, he said, dropping the folder on the table, is enough to bury him if it reaches the right hands. But danger grew. The black SUV reappeared more often, sometimes circling the block like a vulture. Amina's fear turned into anger. I won't let them scare me anymore, she said one night, her voice trembling but firm. I'll testify. I'll speak out. David looked at her with pride. You're braver than anyone I know. Despite the threats, redemption prints kept running. The community rallied around them, refusing to be intimidated. Parents continued sending their children for tutoring, and local businesses kept ordering prints. Every coin they earned felt like a victory. One evening, as David was closing the shop, a stranger walked in. He was tall, dressed casually, and carried no menace in his expression. Are you David Chukwu? He asked. David nodded warily. The man extended his hand. My name is Inspector Kalu. I've been investigating Adeyemi for years. I know he's after you. If you have evidence, I can protect you, but only if you're willing to risk everything. David exchanged glances with Amina and Osita. This was their chance. They handed over the folder that night, sealing their decision to fight back. Kalu promised to keep them safe, but David saw the worry in the officer's eyes. Once Adeyemi knows you've turned against him, Kalu warned he'll stop at nothing. 2 nights later, their fears came true. A fire broke out at Redemption Prince. Flames licked the walls as smoke filled the air. David rushed to save equipment while Amina grabbed Samuel. Neighbors helped extinguish the fire before it spread, but the damage was done. On the burnt remains of the shop door, someone had scrawled in ash, "You've been warned." Osita stepped forward, clutching a pistol he hadn't shown before. No more hiding. We take the fight to him. David looked at Amina, who nodded despite the tears in her eyes. Do what you must, she said, but come back to us. The next day, David and Osita followed one of Adeyemi's men to a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Inside, they discovered shipments of illegal goods, guarded by men with weapons. David took photos quietly while Osita kept watch, but a creak of wood gave them away. A voice boomed through the warehouse. I knew you'd come snooping. Adeyemi stepped out of the shadows, surrounded by his men. His smile was cold. You think you can destroy me with your little evidence? I own this city. David's heart pounded, but he stood tall. Not for long. Adeyemi laughed. You've made a big mistake, boy. Tonight, you'll learn what happens to those who betray me. Gunmen closed in as Adeyemi raised his hand to signal an attack. David gripped Osida's pistol, sweat dripping from his brow. The first shot rang out in the darkness. David is outnumbered. Should he fight his way out or surrender to protect his family? Comment what you do. Like this video if you're rooting for him, and subscribe. Next time chapter will leave you breathless. The first gunshot echoed like thunder through the warehouse. David dove behind a stack of crates as splinters flew around him. Osita returned fire, his face grim and steady. Adeyemi's men scattered, some firing wildly, others circling to cut off their escape. David's heart hammered in his chest, his hands trembling as he gripped the pistol Osita had given him. This was no longer about fear, it was about survival. "Stay low," Osita shouted, firing another shot that clipped a guard's arm. David nodded, crawling to a better position. In the chaos, Adeyemi stood calm, his cold smile unbroken as he barked orders. "Don't kill them yet. I want the boy alive." Osita's bullets ran out, and he ducked behind cover. "We can't hold them here. We need an exit." David scanned the warehouse, spotting a side door half hidden by cargo. "There," he yelled. Together they made a dash for it, bullets whizzing past. Just as a guard raised his weapon to fire at David, a new gunshot rang out from outside, hitting the guard squarely. The door burst open, and Inspector Kalu stormed in with a small tactical team. "Police! Drop your weapons!" he shouted. Chaos erupted. Some of Adeyemi's men fled, others fought back. Adeyemi slipped into the shadows, disappearing before Kalu could reach him. Kalu grabbed David's arm, pulling him towards safety. "I told you this was dangerous," he growled. "But you've got guts." Osita smirked despite the blood dripping from a graze on his arm. "We're not done yet." They escaped into the night, leaving the burning chaos of the warehouse behind. Back at the safe house, Amina rushed to David, clutching Samuel to her chest. Her relief melted into tears as she embraced him. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. David kissed her forehead. "You'll never lose me." The next morning, Kalu revealed that the raid had yielded crucial evidence: shipment records, illegal weapons, and documents tying Adeyemi to crimes across the city. "With this, we can take him down," Kalu said. "But he's still out there, and he's dangerous." For a moment, hope returned. The evidence was handed to authorities, and the media began reporting on Adeyemi's alleged crimes. Yet, instead of retreating, Adeyemi struck back harder. His men attacked police stations, burned cars, and spread fear across the city. The government hesitated to move, fearing his reach. Then came the twist. One of Adeyemi's closest men, a quiet enforcer named Malik, contacted Kalu in secret. "I'm done serving a devil," Malik confessed. "I have proof he's planning something bigger, something that will make the city bleed." Kalu arranged a meeting, but it came with risk. As David prepared to meet Malik, Amina pleaded with him. "You've done enough. Please, let the police handle it." David shook his head. "If I don't see this through, we'll never be free." At the meeting spot, a rundown parking garage, Malik handed David a flash drive. "This has everything: bank records, murder contracts, even names of the politicians he owns." But before they could leave, headlights flooded the area. Adeyemi's men poured in, weapons raised. Malik shoved the drive into David's pocket. "Run," he shouted. Bullets erupted, and Malik fell to the ground, covering their escape. David and Osita fled into the city streets, sirens blaring in the distance. When they returned to the safe house, David handed the drive to Kalu. "This ends now," he said. Kalu nodded. "It will. But be ready. He'll come for you before this is over." That night, as the city trembled under the growing war between law and crime, David stood by the window, watching the lights flicker. Amina joined him, holding Samuel. "Do you think we'll ever be safe?" she asked. He took her hand. "Not yet, but we're closer than ever." The next day, news broke that Adeyemi had disappeared. The city buzzed with rumors. Some said he fled, others claimed he was planning something catastrophic. David knew the fight wasn't over. In fact, it was reaching its peak. As David closed the shop that evening, a car screeched to a halt outside. The door swung open, and Adeyemi stepped out, a gun in his hand and a smile on his face. "We meet again, boy," he said. Tonight, this ends. David's face-off with Adeyemi has finally come. Will he survive this confrontation, or is this where his story ends? Comment your predictions, like this video if you're on David's side, and subscribe so you don't miss the shocking chapter. The moment Adeyemi stepped out of the car, time seemed to slow. The night air was heavy, the street eerily silent except for the faint hum of the engine. David's body stiffened, every muscle screaming at him to protect what mattered most. Behind him, Amina clutched Samuel, her eyes wide with terror, yet blazing with defiance. Adeyemi walked forward casually, as if this were a friendly visit rather than a showdown. His gun glinted under the streetlight. "You've been a thorn in my side for too long, boy," he said smoothly. "I warned you, but you didn't listen." David stepped forward, shielding his family. "You've destroyed lives for too long, Adeyemi. It ends tonight." Adeyemi laughed, low and menacing. "Ends? No, David. Tonight, I take back control." He gestured, and two armed men emerged from the shadows, circling the house. Osita appeared at the door, pistol drawn. "You'll have to go through me first," he growled. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. "Old man," Adeyemi sneered. "Still clinging to a fight you lost years ago? You should have stayed dead to the world." Osita didn't flinch. "This time, I finished what you started." Before Adeyemi could respond, sirens wailed in the distance. Inspector Kalu had arrived with backup, the flashing lights painting the street in streaks of red and blue. Adeyemi's men raised their weapons, and chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked through the night. David grabbed Amina and Samuel, pushing them toward the back of the house. "Stay down," he shouted. He turned back to see Osita exchanging shots with Adeyemi's men, his movements sharp and precise despite his age. In the middle of the firefight, Adeyemi grabbed Amina, pulling her against him with his gun pressed to her temple. "One more step, boy, and she dies," he snarled. Samuel wailed in her arms, his cries piercing the air. David froze, his hands shaking as he raised them. "Let her go. This is between you and me." Adeyemi smirked. "Then surrender. Drop the evidence, drop your pride, and maybe I'll let her live." David's mind raced. He knew giving in meant death, but rushing forward could end in tragedy. Suddenly, Osita emerged from behind, aiming at Adeyemi. The old man's voice cut through the chaos. "Drop her, Adeyemi." But Adeyemi twisted, firing a shot. Osita groaned and fell to the ground, clutching his side. Rage surged through David, burning away his fear. As Adeyemi turned back toward him, David lunged, tackling him to the ground. The gun skidded across the pavement. They struggled, fists and fury colliding under the moonlight. Adeyemi's strength was brutal, but David's resolve was stronger. He pinned Adeyemi down, landing blow after blow. Suddenly, a new voice cut through the night. "Enough." Inspector Kalu appeared, his weapon trained on Adeyemi. "It's over." Adeyemi laughed, blood dripping from his mouth. "You think arresting me will end this? My reach goes beyond you, beyond this city." Kalu pressed the barrel of his gun to Adeyemi's head. "Not tonight." His men moved in, restraining Adeyemi's goons and cuffing Adeyemi himself. As Adeyemi was dragged away, his final words were a hiss. "This isn't the end, David. You'll never escape me." David rushed to Amina, pulling her into his arms. Samuel clung to his mother, still crying but alive. Then he turned to Osita, who lay bleeding but conscious. "Stay with me, Uncle," David pleaded. Osita managed a weak smile. "You're stronger than I ever was. Don't waste it." Ambulance lights replaced the sirens as paramedics loaded Osita onto a stretcher. Before they closed the doors, he reached for David's hand. "Finish this for all of us." That night, the evidence Malik had given them was released to the press. Videos, contracts, and confessions flooded the media. Adeyemi's empire began to crumble as authorities launched raids across the city. But everyone knew a man like Adeyemi wouldn't go down without a final play. As dawn broke, David stood outside the hospital where Osita fought for his life. Amina joined him, holding Samuel. "Do you think it's over?" she asked softly. David looked at the horizon, the sun breaking through the clouds. "No, The worst is still coming. He won't stop until one of us is gone. As if to confirm his fears, David's phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered, and Adeyemi's voice, cold and calm, said, "You have 24 hours. Either give me the boy, or everyone you love dies." Asterisk David has only one day to make the hardest choice of his life. Should he run, fight, or sacrifice everything to save his family? Drop your predictions in the comments. Hit like if you're on edge, and subscribe. The phone slipped from David's trembling hand as Adeyemi's chilling words echoed in his mind. "You have 24 hours. Either give me the boy, or everyone you love dies." Asterisk the street outside was silent, but David felt the weight of an entire city pressing down on his chest. Amina's eyes searched his face. "What did he say?" she whispered, clutching Samuel close. David swallowed hard. "He wants our son. If we don't give him Samuel, he'll kill us all." Amina's grip tightened. "Never. He'll never have him." Inside the hospital room, Uncle Osita stirred, bandages across his chest. "I heard," he rasped. "You can't negotiate with the devil. The only way to end this is to cut him out completely." David leaned close. "How?" "He has men everywhere." Osita smirked weakly. "Not as many as he thinks. Kalu and I have been working while you've been running. We have a plan, but it's dangerous." Inspector Kalu arrived shortly after, his expression grim. "We traced Adeyemi's hideout. He's holding his remaining loyal men at an abandoned hotel near the city outskirts. This is where he wants the exchange. We'll set up an ambush, but you need to play along long enough to draw him out." David's jaw tightened. "You're asking me to walk into a trap?" Kalu nodded. "Yes, but it's the only way to end this." That night, David held Amina close, both of them awake as Samuel slept between them. "If something happens to me," David began, but Amina cut him off. "Don't. You're coming back to us." Tears shone in her eyes. "We've come too far to lose now." The next evening, David drove alone to the abandoned hotel, Samuel safely hidden with Amina at a police safe house. The place loomed like a skeleton in the dusk, windows shattered, walls scarred by time. Adeyemi stood at the entrance, flanked by armed men. His smile was cold. "Where's the boy?" David's voice was steady. "Safe. Somewhere you'll never reach." Adeyemi chuckled. "Wrong answer." He snapped his fingers, and his men raised their guns. Suddenly, floodlights exploded to life. Kalu's tactical team swarmed the area surrounding the building. Gunfire erupted. David dove behind a crumbling wall as bullets tore through the air. Kalu's voice roared commands while officers engaged Adeyemi's men. Osita, despite his injuries, appeared from the shadows with a rifle, covering David as he moved closer to Adeyemi. Amid the chaos, Adeyemi grabbed David by the collar, slamming him against the wall. "You think you could take me down?" he snarled. "I built this city." David's eyes burned with fury. "You build it on blood and fear. Tonight it ends." With a surge of strength, David wrestled the gun from Adeyemi's hand and struck him to the ground. Adeyemi reached for a hidden knife, but Osita's voice rang out. "Not today." A single shot fired. Adeyemi collapsed, the knife slipping from his grasp. The battle ended quickly after their leader fell. Kalu's men cuffed the remaining henchmen, dragging them into waiting vans. Adeyemi, barely conscious, was loaded onto a stretcher, his empire crumbling around him. His last words were a whisper. "You think this is over? Someone will take my place." David stood over him, breathing hard. "Maybe, but not today." Weeks later, peace returned to their lives. The evidence against Adeyemi flooded the courts. Politicians who once protected him distanced themselves, and his fortune was seized. Uncle Osita recovered slowly, proud to see David become the man he had always hoped to be. Redemption Prince reopened, bigger than ever, with the support of the community. Parents who once whispered scandal now praised the couple's resilience. Amina resumed teaching, her name cleared, her spirit unbroken. Samuel grew surrounded by love, his laughter filling the shop as customers came and went. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, David stood outside the shop, watching Amina read to Samuel under the soft glow of the lights. He walked over, wrapped his arms around her, and whispered, "We made it." Amina smiled, leaning into him. "We didn't just survive, David. We built something beautiful." Their love, once scorned, had become their strength. From disgrace to happiness, from fear to fulfillment, they had written their own ending, one of hope, courage, and redemption. David locked up the shop, holding Samuel in his arms as Amina took his hand. Together, they walked into the night, their shadows long, but their future bright. What did you think of David and Amina's journey from scandal to redemption? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if their love inspired you. And subscribe so you never miss another powerful story like this one.